So yesterday I recorded a video about my thoughts on this latest round of discussion about abortions. I was mentioning how there's a lot more to enjoy in life without having to resort to, doing the one thing that could lead up to a decision on whether or not you want to have abortion, right? And unfortunately, I need both hands to count how many times I've met somebody and they wanted to do that thing within a week of us meeting. And it's too often. It's too often. Of both genders, actually, that I meet. And then within a week, a discussion or the idea of that comes up. And it's just unfortunate because there's so much to enjoy in our lives. And unfortunately, so one of my subscribers said that maybe it's a sign that we're addicted to that event, right? Unfortunately, this isn't the first time in my life I have found myself surrounded by junkies. And what's really worse is we don't even recognize that we're surrounded by junkies, right? So right now as I speak, we have an opioid epidemic, but everybody recognizes that that's something wrong, right? There are so many other addictions that you could be surrounded by, and you're the odd one out for being straight and not doing that, right? So obviously the big one is unhealthy eating habits, unhealthy lifestyles. You're surrounded by it, right? It's when you're in recovery that you realize that, you're the odd one out, right? So 20 years ago, I quit drinking soda. I used to drink 3 or 4 liters of soda a day. And my parents were very upset about my soda habit. They wanted me to cut back. And I lived with my parents. They forced me to cut back. I was never happy about that. I was irritable. We would then go to a party where soda was available, and I would just guzzle 5 liters of it because I knew I wouldn't be able to have it at home. And you get the idea. I would make a fool of myself. I remember one year, my family and I went to a Thanksgiving party being held at, we had some organizations for Asian people. And I went there and I guzzled 5 or 6 liters of soda. And this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, when a lot of venues like that still had payphones. And I went to the payphone and I prank called 911. And the reason I did that, now looking back at it, obviously I was immature at the time, but now looking back at it, I was upset at myself for my soda habit, and I couldn't control it, and my parents were upset about it. It created a lot of conflict, and I probably made the prank call to take my mind off of all that. Anyway, that was my soda habit, and I quit altogether. And the reason I quit altogether was because that was the only way it worked for me. I tried cutting back, I tried to reason with myself about it. Didn't work. Now after I quit, my family and I continued to have conflict because now my family thought I should be a little bit more social and drink soda from time to time. Now, if the choice is you can quit your opioids or you could use them until you hurt yourself, and there isn't really an in-between choice, right, because of the addiction problems. Now, would you tell somebody to choose that non-existent choice, right? But my family didn't recognize that until very recently, and to be honest, a lot of people who I'm surrounded by still do not recognize that. It's getting more popular to avoid drinking soda, but not every food has, that I've quit has it become popular to just completely not partake in, right? But it gives you the idea of how badly you're surrounded by all this stuff. Now, 3 years ago, I had a binge eating problem. Now, you might look at me, I'm not overweight. How could I have a binge eating problem? That's not the point. The point was that oftentimes I needed to participate in something. I was at a Computer Olympiad conference. I was at a job interview. I'd be late showing up to the job interview because I insisted on getting my favorite food. I was interviewing for a tutoring agency. This was before COVID, where you could actually go to a kid's home and tutor them. I was interviewing for this agency, and I was late showing up. And the reason the reason I was late showing up was because I wanted to get my favorite, I can't even remember what food it was, a bag of potato chips or something. I went to the store and they were sold out, and I proceeded to go to 2 or 3 other stores looking for them. And by the time I found the chips, I lost the directions to the appointment, and I was 5-10 minutes late. And obviously it doesn't make a good impression. I don't know if that's the only reason I missed out on the job, but it's a bad thing anyway. I was at a Computer Olympiad conference in 2019, and I was waiting for a couple of my opponents, and they were in another event, and I thought, okay, there's 10 minutes, I can walk to the 7-Eleven next door to get my favorite seaweed snack. I get there and they're sold out. And I walked another, I want to say at least half a mile, 1 mile to another store to get them. And then I lost the directions for how to get back to the hotel. And I couldn't find my opponents. By the time I got back to the hotel, they were starting to pack up. They had given up looking for me. And they were very upset at me. And that was the impetus. Oh, during the conference in 2019, after I came back from the opponents who were upset at me, one night I had a dream. I had a dream that I was at another Computer Olympiad conference, and my ex-girlfriend was there. And she also studies computer science. I was at the conference, and my ex-girlfriend and her husband, she's not actually married in real life, but in my dream she had a husband. And I got into an elevator, and I was holding the door for them. And so I wanted to catch up to what they've been doing. I was holding the elevator door for them. My ex-girlfriend looks to her husband and says, "Don't get in the elevator with this guy. He has a disease." And this is summer 2019 we're talking about. I was shaken awake by that remark. It made me realize, oh my God, my eating habits. And that's when I really started to think about it. I made a resolution in early 2020 to normalize my relationship with food. But I continued to be haunted by that dream until a few months into 2020, when everybody was avoiding getting into elevators. And then that dream made sense, and I didn't kick myself anymore. I have a tendency to predict the future in my dreams for some reason. Now, there's another problem where I'm surrounded by addicts. So I'm an adjunct professor for a relatively startup university. We're working toward accreditations. Now, early on in my career over there, I took a vacation, and my colleagues really judged what I did. Because A, I went out by myself, and B, I didn't really go to one of those popular tourist destinations. I kind of went out to my favorite corner of the world. And so my colleagues mercilessly judged me about it. And so I feel it really isolated me from the camaraderie of the whole team. And I vowed to think carefully about where I travel and be a little bit more observant on what makes me a good teammate to work with, right? From a human point of view, not from a work point of view, from a human point of view. So I vowed to attempt to go on a more conventional vacation. So in 2021, I took a trip to Las Vegas. What was really helpful was that, see, one of the problems I dislike about going into a casino is that in Las Vegas, practically all the casinos still allow smoking. But last year when I went there, I was able to put on a P100 mask. I didn't look too out of place, right? Today, if you did that, you might start to look a little bit out of place now, right? If you did it back in 2019, forget about it. They might not even let you in the door, right? And unfortunately, I really didn't like my vacation in Las Vegas. I spent 2 days there, and fortunately, I quickly turned away from that. I went to Phoenix, and I had a great time. Unfortunately, my colleagues will probably disagree about that. It really made me think, because one day I may own a business or manage other people. It really made me think about how I'll handle work-life balance kind of issues, right? You want to have work-life balance, but you also want to have some work-life privacy, right? People should be able to go on vacation without their plans being the center of attention to their colleagues and all of that. It may really stop and think about how addicted we are to worrying about other people's lives, to the detriment of both that person and yourself, right? Anyway, so I find myself surrounded by junkies, and unfortunately nobody talks about these addictions in the same way we would talk about heroin, about alcohol. See, back in 2003 when I quit drinking soda, I bet there were a lot of people who quit drinking alcohol, and everybody seemed to understand why they can't take a drop of alcohol. It didn't work that way with soda, and similarly it doesn't work that way with sex, with the worrying about how other people live their lives, with the what else did I mention there? Eating disorders. Everybody has challenges, and if the way they're handling it actually works, allow them to work themselves on it, right?